Welcome to all our partners here at Sandbrook Park on this drizzly grey summer morning. We're here to further the conversation on the Great British switch off of both the PSTN and WR networks. Obviously, we can't underplay the significance of that particular milestone as we move from a traditional network to this new era of all fibre. It really is the end of an era. And whilst we've done previous webinars, we've communicated with you guys, our partners, in lots of different ways over the last, 24 months. We just thought this was a really good juncture to take stock, given we're now only 34 days away from the UK stop sell of those copper services. Thanks to all of you that have submitted questions already via your account managers and various channels. As you'll see on screen, there is the means to log any questions that you come up with as we're talking, and also the ability to like any that you might see. And I'll try and pick out some of the favourites. We'll do our best to get to them towards the end. So without further ado, I'll quickly make a couple of introductions. I've got a couple of my colleagues with me. So Jodie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Nick. Good morning, everybody. My name's Jodie. I'm the Voice and UC Portfolio Manager. I currently lead on our All IP migration program as well, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail shortly. And that's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jodie. Yeah. So I'm Andy Sayle. I'm the Connectivity Portfolio Manager at Zen. So my team look after all of Zen's connectivity products in terms of pricing, product development, propositions. So we cover broadband, Ethernet, and more recently 4G as well, 5G coming up. So we're the guys that are putting in the replacement products for the WLR network, which is getting switched off.
Great stuff. Thanks, guys. So brought the A-team along this morning, as you can see. Okay, so let's crack on. We've got plenty to cover. So let's cover off the basics. We shared plenty of content, as I say, over the last months and years, but let's get the basics down. Perhaps, Andy, you could cover that off. So sum up the switch off for me, and I'm thinking, what does it mean for the industry? What are the alternative options that our partners have, and why is this change happening?
Yeah. This is the fundamentals of it, really. So we've got today, or for a long time, we've all been familiar with providing broadband over a phone line. So we've had WLR, and then we've run our ADSL or FTTC services across the top. With the WLR network getting switched off, that's just not going to work anymore. Those WLR lines are not going to be there to support those older traditional broadband services. And so Openreach have been rolling out replacements. Those replacements are FTTP, so full fibre broadband all the way to the customer's premises, and Segea being the replacement for FTTC. It's a single order product, so it's you place an order for Segea. They still use the same copper pairs, roll that just like you'd have for WLR and FTTC, but there's no voice service across that, and you don't need to order it as two things. You order one thing, you get the copper pair and the FTTC tap service over the top. So that's what we're moving towards. Openreach are planning to, BT Group in general, plan to switch off the PSTN WLR network at the end of 2025. So we're, a year and 5 months away from the switch off. That'll be the culmination of a project that sort of kicked off in, was it be 2017, 2018? So we're several years into it now. The first major milestone is about to happen, 34 days away, as we've already mentioned, and that's the stop sell of those WLR services. So that means no more orders for WLR or all the services that run over the top of it. So no more FTTC, no more the GFast, no more ADSL orders running over the top of those WLR lines. That's the 5th of September for those. Just to put it in your calendar if you've not already got in there. Don't pencil it in, put it in with ink, get it in there. Permanent marker, 34 days away.
Yeah, it sharpens your focus, doesn't it? 34 days. Yeah. So you and I, in fact, Jodie, you weren't in on this one, but we sat with the comms dealer guys back in spring now.
Yeah.
What's changed since then?
Yeah, and I guess in terms of Openreach have rolled out more FTTP, so there's more coverage. They're continuing to roll that out. So it's like 65,000 premises every week. So that's like a pretty decent sized town every week getting access to FTTP. I think what's happened over the last few years and has continued to happen is that the amount of WLR in Openreach's base has decreased. So they're taking out about 2 million FTTP lines every year, are being decommissioned at the moment, with customers switching to Sagia or FTTP. That leaves about 10 million left though. So we've seen the trajectory is WLR is going away. It's not really going away quick enough, if we're all being honest. And that's all down to, I guess, the stop sell is going to help a lot on that, because there's still people ordering WLR and they're not going to be able to. So we'll see an acceleration when that comes in. But yeah, 2 million lines a year have been taken out. If we roll forward, what are we talking, 2 and a bit years, there's still going to be 5 million at the current trajectory WLR lines. So I guess things are moving, things are accelerating. They're probably not going quick enough, and I think it's within all of our interests really to step up the game to protect ourselves.
Okay, and we'll maybe come back to that, that not happening quick enough point a little later. Jodie, so a common sentiment here from some of our partners is that, can we actually believe that Openreach are going to kind of meet this deadline, 34 days away, but these are ambitious targets. Are they really going to meet this deadline? What are your views?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's something that we hear quite frequently. We do a lot of work at the moment to educate our customers around what's going on with the switch off, and it's a common question. Are Openreach going to meet these targets? We've seen Mildenhall and Salisbury that were due for WLR service termination in April. Obviously, that was extended to October, and what came with that was some service degradation measures around the phone line and the connectivity line, just to try and nurture and encourage more customers to make that change and upgrade. Now, given that is a common question, what I would say to that is yes, and I do believe that Openreach are going to meet those targets. We're definitely going to see the stop sell on the 5th of September. That's coming. If that was going to be paused in any way, I think we'd know about that by now. So that's definitely going to happen. The December 2025, that's absolutely, a solid date. And even if, close to the time, even if things do change, why would we want to wait for that? We need to keep that momentum going. We need to pick up that speed. We need to just assume that it's going to happen, because what we don't want to do is leave it to the last moment. In doing so, particularly with, it doesn't matter whether it's a business customer or a consumer. What we want to do is, ensure that there's that continuity of service for the customer. If we don't make those changes to upgrade our customers to all IP technology now, then, the consequence of that is that we're going to have customers that are unable to use the service that they need. So yeah, I firmly believe that those dates are set in stone. There is another program that Openreach are rolling out at the moment, which is the FTTP program. So that's gaining momentum. So at the moment, they're at about 11 million premises passed. The target for 2026 is to reach, I think it's about 42 million. Is that about right? About 42 mil. So
25 by the end of 2026.
So about 25 million by the end of 2026. At the moment, they're rolling out full fibre to, the average size of a town each week. So roughly about 60,000 premises. they really need to kind of accelerate that and boost that and get that up to about 80,000 if they do want to achieve that target in 2026. So what I'm trying to say is there's two kind of concurrent programs happening there. They've got kind of firm dates. There's work to be done, I suppose, on both aspects, but the key date is that December 2025. It's going to happen.
Yeah,
I'm confident in that.
I think you're right, Jodie. I think the December 2025, there's a lot of talk of, will it happen? Is it going to happen? I think, speaking off the record to some of the guys at Openreach, they're saying to me, it's got to happen because the kit in the exchanges isn't going to last much longer. The people that are working on the kit are retiring. The people that with the expertise, it's been in there for decades, and it's just not going to stick around. They're not going to have the option to extend it because it's not going to last. Now, that's not the official word, but I think I can believe that. And there's going to be a number of steps that have to encourage everyone to make the switch over to the new products. Between then commercial steps, I think pricing on WLR and the legacy products is just going to go north. We're going to see it increase it's a combination, I guess, of carrot and stick, and the stick is going to start to come harder and harder. Yeah, sorry, Jodie, you were going to add to that.
No, I was just going to echo that. You know, it's weighing up. Do we want to see those? Do we want to have that impact with those price increases that are going to come in, you know, hard and fast over the next couple of years on the run up to the December 2025, or do we just want to get customers moved to the right technology as soon as possible and seize that opportunity to do that? There's never a wrong time to talk to your customer, so use this as an opportunity to do that and get them moved.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm sure a number of our partners saw that Clive Selley was in the offices here. Clive Selley, CEO of Openreach, was in talking to Richard Tang only maybe 6, 7, 8 weeks ago. He's sat just behind us. Interviews, check it out on our kind of our Zen YouTube channel. And he absolutely stressed that urgency. So I don't think we can be under any kind of illusions that this isn't happening. If anything, it's more about the trajectory. And you used the word carrot and stick there, Andy. I know when maybe a couple of years ago, it was very much a carrot with incentives, discounts on fibre products, things like that. But now we're in that kind of stick category. Yeah. We're expecting Openreach price increases. There will be Openreach price increases on copper services in April. We're talking in the magnitude of kind of 25%. This is the expectation we're setting with some of our, with our partners. You may have had those conversations with your account manager in the last weeks. Anything to add to that? That's the reality of the situation, is it not?
Yeah, the reality of the situation is that, there will be price increases across everything. Openreach will increase in line with CPI, but we expect that the legacy services will see the largest share of those increases. It'll be used to accelerate the migration. Customers, if they stick on the legacy products, will pay more than if they switch to the newer services. So whether you believe the switch off happens in 2025 or not, it doesn't really matter. If you look at it from a pure pounds and pence perspective, the cheapest way to keep your customers online or to serve your customers is to switch them to the newer products, because the old ones are just going to cost a lot of money.
Okay.
I just want to add in addition to that, so in addition to the supplier increases as well, what we need to take into account is many of our partners use our WLR platform to place their orders through the ICP. One thing to consider is that in addition to those, as the WLR base shrinks, particularly within Zen, there's the likelihood that we will need to pass some of those charges on, which we haven't done to date. So pass some of those platform charges on to our partners that have WLR in their installed base, and that'll probably be a per unit charge in addition to the current rental. So there's also that to take into account as well. It's very likely that will come into play.
Yeah, there'll just be less customers to share that cost out between.
Absolutely.
And so we'll need to flow some of it through.
Absolutely, yeah.
So but completely avoidable by migrating your customers.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, good point, well made. Okay. So moving on from that, let's talk about what's actually going to happen on the 5th. Our alarm clocks will go off on the 5th September. what's the new world going to look like, or certainly this stop sell world? Andy, do you want to try that one?
Well, from a straight ordering point of view, our availability checker will only return FTTP and Segea as being available. So whereas today, if you're in an FTTP area, today our availability checker already only shows you FTTP. We've got a fibre first policy where if FTTP is available, that's what we provide. But if it wasn't available and Segea is available, you get the option of Segea, FTTC, ADSL. Those other options go away. Segea or FTTP, that is it come 5th of September. Or lease lines, obviously, EAD is available, and we're just seeing that the price on that has been falling. So whereas it was particularly premium, obviously it's still more than the likes of FTTP or other broadband products, but the affordability of that has come down. So that's your options for connectivity from Zen come 5th of September is a lease line, FTTP or Segea.
Okay. Anything to add, Jodie?
No.
Okay.
Good summary.
I guess voice, do we want to touch on what the voice products that are available? So I guess we probably have some partners providing voice services using our WLR lines today, and they might be saying, well, what do I provide?
It's a good shout, Andy. So from a partner perspective, so at the moment we have WLR, which we know is going to go stop sell on the 5th of September. So there's a replacement product for that. So we launched, I think it was in January this year, we launched Cloud Comms Solo, which is a PSTN replacement. I wouldn't say it's like for like, and the reason that I say that is because the Cloud Comms Solo product, which is the replacement, is actually more feature rich than you would get with a traditional fixed line. So for those partners that aren't aware of the Cloud Comms Solo product, please speak to your account managers or your service delivery managers. The cost for that product, so the rental is approximately £2. Well, it's £2.20 a month, and that's on a 30-day rolling contract. Features with that, such as directory, call forwarding, 3 simultaneous calls. So that is the transitional product for any partners that have end users that have a fixed line at this time and they need an alternative that's just like a dial tone only. The other really good benefit of the Cloud Comms Solo is that it's a really good entry product for cloud comms in general. So that's where we talk about solutions, and it can be a little bit more complex for businesses, for example. Moving your end user onto Cloud Comms Solo means that as your customer's business evolves, you can flex up basically. So yes, if you've not heard about Cloud Comms Solo, please speak to your account managers, as I say, because that is the transitional product at the moment for our partners.
So you start with the WLR replacement, and then it's a licensed kind of upgrade to open
Absolutely.
that suite of telephony
Absolutely.
right through into contact center environments, multimedia type stuff. Okay.
Yeah. We're seeing lots of in the direct side of the business. We're seeing a lot of surprisingly high number of customers that are still interested in that WLR like voice service, aren't we? So is it like 20-30%, I think, of customers are taking a service equivalent type service to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're seeing that. So there's definitely appetite for it. Just scope it out.
Okay, so if you're not aware of that already, then make sure you speak to your account manager about that. Okay, it's time for a poll. We've got something that hopefully will be appearing on your screens momentarily. So what we want to get is a gauge of how you're feeling as our partners. So just give you a bit of time to kind of put your thoughts down. The question is, how do you feel about the move to all IP? And if you can just give us a flavour of how you're feeling. The options are, I have started migrating my existing customer base. I have my migration plan and I'm confident, but I haven't started. I haven't started my migration plan, but I'm confident. I've not given it much thought yet. I need more help and guidance, or I'm not sure how all IP impacts me. So if you can fingers on buttons and take one of those for us, that would be extremely useful. Free. So yeah, what we're seeing here is 60% have started.
Excellent.
Nice.
13% have a plan but not started, and 13% have not started. So yeah, I suppose 60% is good to hear.
Absolutely.
13% with a plan.
So it's nearly 3/4 that have got a plan in place or not, or have got it but not started it.
Yep.
So yeah, it's encouraging.
That's reassuring, definitely.
Yeah, I suppose the 13% that haven't started and don't have a plan, I think, as the inference is, we need to have a conversation and help you with that, and hopefully this can be the start of that kind of journey together.
Yeah, we'd love to them to reach out to account managers or to Jodie and I directly, and we can set up some sessions and speak to those guys and share some of our experience, I guess. Jodie in particular has got a lot of experience being the architect of Zen's own plan. So yeah. Okay,
that is a perfect segue into the next question, Andy. Well done. It's almost like you've read the questions beforehand. So yes, in consideration of those results, Jodie, let's talk about the Zen estate. I'm going to ask you in a moment about some sort of experiences to share, maybe to help some of our partners. But let's first talk about the latest position. What are we seeing in terms of numbers? Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back. Let's go back probably about 18 months. So about 18 months ago, we started formulating a plan and a strategy around how we're going to move our existing installed WLR base onto an all IP product. So 18 months in the planning. So within that, we actually started to execute our own internal program in January this year. So what that is made up of is what we call managed migrations. So this is where we notify our customer that has a WLR product that we're going to upgrade them. So we're going to upgrade them to our digital voice product. Now, the particular selection criteria for this specific cohort are customers that at the moment don't have full fibre available to them, so FTTP. So what happens in this scenario is that Segea does a lot of the heavy lifting from a connectivity point of view. So we're telling these customers we're going to upgrade them to digital voice. In doing so, we then upgrade, we also move them over to Segea as well. So it's been a process which involves a lot of people, and I appreciate not everybody has the resource that we do to be able to execute, such a large program. To date, we've seen a lot of success. Our numbers are definitely heading in the downward trajectory, at the pace that we would like. We've to date, with orders that we've got in place, probably around about the back end of August, we'll have carried out a managed migration on 38% of our WLR base, which is amazing. And then we anticipate, fast forward 12 months, we'll probably have about approximately 10,000 lines left. And I expect that those will be exceptions such as vulnerable users. So when we're going through the criteria for moves, we make sure that we exclude vulnerable users because there is a regulatory obligation to be able to provide this type of customer with a backup unit so that they can make a call to emergency services in the event of a power outage. We take into account what hardware the customer has at the time. So there's lots of moving parts. But yeah, that's where we're at. So we're making really good progress at the moment. And we just need to keep that momentum going. And the reason that I mentioned the 18 months is because I just want to express that for those partners that haven't yet started, formulated a plan, it can take time. We've had lots of stop-starts as well throughout this progress. We've had to revise the comms out to customers at least 4 times. So there's been 4 iterations of the comms. When we started communicating to customers, we did it in very small batches to test the message that we were actually relaying to customers, and we took feedback and we made changes. So it's a lengthy process. So I suppose what I'm getting at is, if you haven't started, you really need to start now, given that there's, 2025 will soon be here, and it does take some time. So yeah, all going in the right direction.
And just kind of building on that a little bit then, plenty of partners out there with significant estates of their own. We've also had a task to get our house in order, but what kind of experiences would you share? Any kind of top tips, lessons that might be of great value to the audience?
No, that's a great question. So I think I touched on it briefly a moment ago. So one learning that we had is, don't assume that the first comms that you send out is going to land the message straight away. You've got to bear in mind that, well, the approach that we've taken is that we're telling customers that we're moving them. So we're giving them notice. So you've just got to take that feedback. You've got to communicate with your operational teams and your customer facing teams, just to make sure that you're gathering that feedback so that you can make changes to the comms. And as I mentioned, we've had to change it 4 times in like a 6-month period, just to make sure that we're relaying the right message and that we're not missing something in the FAQs, for example, just to get it well rounded. I mentioned the stop starts. So we've had to pause in the event of something maybe not going to plan. So again, you need to build that flex into your plan for that as well. And that's more or less it in a nutshell. The key thing is about the messaging and how you educate and articulate it to your customers. Yeah. We used other methods such as newsletters to kind of warm customers up before we actually sent them the comms. So I think that covers it all.
One of the key ways that helped us with the messaging was the segmentation of the customer base. So break it down into different cohorts based on the type of customer, the kind of products they had, hardware, because that allowed us then to communicate more specifically with those kind of customers, and give them the messaging was relevant to them rather than it being overly generic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and I guess I think we talked about this a bit on the spring one, didn't we, Nick, about being understanding your customers, and making sure you understand who your customers are, what they're using the services for, what's important to them, so that you can plan based on that and address your communication so that you can what's going to hit home with them, and that's certainly been key for us. And from the partners that I've spoken to that have already got plans in place, it seems that's worked well for them as well, and been able to target their or the low-hanging fruit to start with, and get a lot of the volume done on that side, and then you can move on to those more difficult cases, whether it's vulnerable customers or complex sites, customers with really complicated sites, or using I don't know, they've got unusual use cases, or perhaps not unusual, but are certainly not the same as most customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I forgot to mention is we also put in place a robust exemptions process as well. So what I mean by that is, when we communicated with our customers to let them know that we were going to be moving them, we also invited them to let us know if they had a vulnerability that we didn't know about, because we do already capture that information. We invited them to let us know if they were in a rural location. So, for example, they wouldn't be able to use their mobile phone to make a call to emergency services in the event of a power outage. And another consideration that we had on there as well is any customer. So as we know, for example, alarm, like a burglar alarm in a home, is, well, up to now has been reliant on that PSTN network. Now, a lot of alarm providers, the onus is on them as well to make sure that they are upgrading their products to make sure that they're able to be compatible with digital services. So we also made exemptions for those as well. so that it gives the customer time to liaise with their alarm provider, using that as an example, to make sure that if we upgraded them to a digital product, that their alarm system would still work as well. If that wasn't going to be the case, then again, we'd invite the customer to let us know, and we would make them exempt from the process, and we just wouldn't place the managed migration. And we'll pick those, as Andy said, those more complex ones up, further down the line. But by doing everything now, it gives us that time and flexibility to do that.
Yeah, it's worth, I guess, just making it clear that wasn't like an indefinite exemption. They're just moving them to the end of the process. Unfortunately, Openreach is still switching the network off,
Correct.
and so
Point,
it's just pushing them to the back of our process. It's an exemption from our immediate migration process.
Absolutely. Deprioritisation. So.
Yeah, and I was going to come on to some specifics, but you've touched on a number of them there. So the ones down here are things like lift lines, but there's an awful lot of our partners who are telephony specialists. There's a lot of PBX type kit out there that they are maintained under contracts, under leases, etc. Anything more to add on that kind of stuff? And there's a lot of information out there, but I suppose it's getting hold of that and getting it into the plan.
Yeah, and I guess it comes back to understanding the customers and what they're using the services for. So PBX, if you've got a contract with your customer for PBX, a lot of PBXs will support moving to SIP trunks. So you could install that kind of service until the end of the PBX process as an interim measure before moving your customers to a hosted solution like Zen Cloud Comms. So that and you can I guess it's part of the management of the service. You keep the customer up and running and put together a migration plan for them to move to something which will better serve their needs in the long term. So it's a short-term solution, migrating customer to a long-term one in the over, it could be I guess over another year or a couple of years, depending on what's appropriate for your customer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was at a BT Tower Openreach event last month, I think it was. You were there, Andy, and that was certainly a big topic of conversation from that kind of community. So yeah, if you don't have access to that kind of intelligence, then reach out to us, because there's plenty of resources out there, and there's lots going on to support partners with those kind of niche requirements and how they go about facing that challenge. Okay, moving on slightly now. This one's perhaps for you, Andy, predominantly. One of the most common questions that comes from our partners is about the availability of fibre services.
Yep.
So where there's a state of ADS only, where there's a geography of ADSL only today, what should our partners be doing? We talked about the latest numbers, but what's your message to those partners? And SOTAP is obviously the thing that's kind of ringing in my head here. So maybe if you can just generally cover that question. Yeah.
So for those not familiar with SOTAP is Openreach's temporary or transitional access product that is intended to replace SMPF. So SMPF is a shared metallic path facility. It's the Openreach product that service providers like Zen used to supply ADSL. So you might have heard of ADSL. Some providers are calling it. It's a product that Openreach haven't quite launched yet. It's not available for us to buy as a full product, but it's likely to be coming at some point soon. Openreach make it available where there's no other fibre products on that. So Openreach can't provide SAGIA or FTTP. So we're talking very rural locations or exchange-only lines. So in city centres, town centres, where you're close to an exchange, often the line doesn't go via a cabinet. So FTTC type services are not available. They're the areas that Openreach are targeting, I guess, with FTTP. It's easier for them to roll out FTTP in those locations than it is in rural ones. And so longer term, we're really talking about the rural locations that are difficult to reach with anything else. And that's where kind of where SOTAP fits in. Some of those customers that only have ADSL available from Openreach have access to other products. So I had a look before the webinar this morning at some data from thinkbroadband.com. They estimate that it's 99.1% of the UK has access to a fibre product. So that's either FTTC or FTTP from Openreach or an altnet or another network provider. So most premises have access to something else. Segea FTTP from Openreach cover 96%, I think, of the UK. So there's a small gap on the Openreach network. At Zen, we think fixed wireless services are the better solution in those areas than ADSL. If you're in a very rural location, you have an ADSL type service, you might be getting a few megabits per second. Most of those customers would get a better service on 5G or 4G. There'll be a tiny number that can't get access to anything else. And so we're focusing on, from our direct customers, is developing products in that space. Because Openreach haven't launched SOTAP yet, Zen doesn't have a SOTAP product to offer to our partners yet. We don't have any plans to launch one anytime soon, but we will continue to monitor the situation on ADSL coverage, our FTTP and Segea coverage, and if there is a significant number of lines that don't have access to anything else, then obviously it makes sense for Zen to develop a SOTAP product, and so we would look to launch that we'd make that decision and launch something over the well before the 2025 switch off, so that partners would have a product to migrate their customers to. It wouldn't be something we'd leave to the very last minute, but it's not available at the moment.
Okay, so yeah, lots of questions about that. FTTP and FTTC just isn't available. That's just that you see that changing quickly. That's going to be acceleration of
and looking at the orders that we get on any given month, if we look back not too long ago, we were having hundreds of ADSL orders every month. I'm not talking like years and years ago, just 12 months ago. This time last year, we were in the hundreds of orders per month. We're now a handful of orders per week. So we're like a couple of dozen orders in a month, that kind of region. So very small, and that is because of the rollout of FTTP, predominantly picking up those exchange-only lines. What we are also seeing is that around 20% of the orders we get every month are for ADSL could have ordered something else. So there's a significant proportion of the ADSL orders that we do get today that could have been ordered on Segea or on FTTP. And so yeah, it's getting the coverage is improving literally every week, and we're seeing that in the orders that we're coming through. More and more orders for FTTP and Segea, and increasingly fewer orders on ADSL.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Some questions I see starting to land here, so we'll come to those in a moment. But just kind of wrapping up, I'm just, before we come on to those questions, analogy that's kind of often used is people with estates of services avoiding this kind of last train scenario, where they're leaving things to the last minute. What do you guys expect to see over the next 24 months? Do you think the stop sell is going to really catalyse this shift? What's your take on it?
Yeah, so yes, I do. The thing that concerns me the most is, I'm hoping that this will gain some momentum, in the next 6 to 12 months, is around businesses in particular. So as the UK heads for modernisation of new infrastructure, you've got to consider the fact that the PSTN network served us for just over a century. So as we move towards that, we just need to bear in mind that particularly for businesses, there's a lot of legacy hardware out there as well. So taking that into account, I believe that in the next 6 to 12 months that there will be more onus on that, and more of an appreciation that it's not just about the fixed line, it's also about the hardware. that's in use as well. That can take time to find alternative solutions. So my view is that it will definitely gain some momentum in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The stop sell in particular is just going to force some of it. There's, customers move between providers every week. We see typically in a month, the average service provider like Zen or any of our partners see sort of 1-2% churn. So when those customers churn, they're going to have to land on a single order GA product, so a Segea product or FTTP. And so even if it was a provider that wasn't actively involved, it's just going to switch. It's going to move to the new product. So that's going to help. We're not seeing that happen all the time today. So that's just going to accelerate things on its own. And then hopefully the webinars like this from Zen and from other providers will encourage the parts of the industry that are not as engaged as others to start putting plans together and to migrate their customers. I think there's two ways to see things. Is that it's not going to happen, and so I'm not really going to put any focus into it. Or you could think, well, it's not going to happen, but it's going to cost me more if I don't switch to the newer products. So I'll just do it anyway. I'll migrate because there's a cost saving to me, and that's certainly probably the way that I would suggest seeing it is that whether you believe the switch off happens in 2025 or not, please do believe that the price of the legacy services will go up. And so, no business wants to see price increases, certainly not price increases above the rate of inflation. And so, to avoid them, just switch your customers onto Segea or FTTP where it's available, and it's a sensible mitigation plan for cost increases. And as a consequence of that, you'll be ready for 2025 anyway. So whether you believe it's going to happen or not, it doesn't really matter. You will save money by migrating your customers to something else.
Yeah, and I just want to add one more thing. So this is a bit of a plea, really. So I know Andy touched on it earlier on in this session, but we're here to support. We're here to help, particularly that cohort that are not yet to begin their planning. Just use us, talk to us, talk to your account managers. We're here to help. So the task can seem quite daunting, but once you get started, it's well worth it. So just to say, we're here. Basically, we're here to support anybody who needs help making that transition.
Okay. Going back to the questions then from the folk out there. Telephony, whilst you got the mic, Jodie, voice is a hot topic. So a couple of questions. I'll pick them off one at a time. How do we get the CLI for our FTTC user ported over to our virtual landline product while keeping the broadband online?
Good question. So with our Cloudcom Solo product, we are about to go online for something called flexible number porting, which in essence is, you'll have heard it referred to in the industry, it's integrated number port. So when that comes online, that will solve that scenario. So the minute that flexible number porting is available, we'll be sure to communicate that out to the partner base, ready to utilise that.
Yeah, and it's probably worth pointing out, absolutely, it is the integrated number porting, fantastic process. You can place your order in the Zen portal in ICP to do that. But for Zen, Jodie mentioned we'd migrated, getting on for 40% of the Zen's WLR base. And we've not used integrated number porting at all, so it's absolutely possible to do it without. Mm-hmm. And the way I think we do that is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jodie, because you're the expert, maybe I should hand over to you, but let's see if I can embarrass myself. We place an order for to migrate the line to Segea.
Yes.
Once that order has been placed, we then place a number port order and trigger the number port to happen at the same point as the WLR going live.
Spot on, yeah. And we've done that using robotics, yes.
Yeah, and we've written a little some software that manages it for us. But previous to that, we had some staff in our order management team were doing it. Yeah, fantastic.
It's a good shout. That spot on.
Okay, this is a wordy one, so pay attention. What happens with current GFast users? When would we need to move them over to another service? At that time, if FTTP isn't available but Segea is, they would need to be moved to a much slower service than what they're used to. Would that actually be mandated? How could that be avoided? Would the change only be forced once FTTP is available?
So we're not forcing anyone to move. Right now, it's up to you guys when to move it. The 2025 deadline is still there, though, obviously. We have a very small number of GFast customers or GFast services across the board, across all of Zen, and a significant proportion of those can now migrate to FTTP. The ones that can't, the options are Segea, move them to Segea, which for the Segea offerings that Zen has, 80/20 is the maximum one, so they would see some of those GFast at least would see a speed decrease. I say some because we find that with GFast the speeds are not necessarily great. So a lot of our direct GFast customers don't really see much benefit compared to the Segea speeds. But so for Zen as a direct business, we're not migrating our G.Fast customers yet, unless they can get FTTP. And I think probably that's the sensible approach for partners for now. Like we've already mentioned on the SOTAP front, we may offer a migration path to a Segea version of GFast called SOGFast. Somebody needs to speak to Openreach about naming products. SOGFast. Could there be a worse name? The message is migrate your customers to FTTP as and when they can get it. As we approach 2025, if they still can't migrate to FTTP, we will make a SOGFast variant available for you to migrate those customers, so that you don't have to degrade their service. Obviously, some customers may choose SOTAP may be appropriate for them, and so you can migrate those now. But the ones that need the speed, hold fire. There's not many of those, so put them to the back of your migration schedule. And concentrate on the low-hanging fruit to start with. It's going to take a while for most partners to migrate their customers. They've got a couple of years to get it done. So push it to the back, get the easy ones done. When you get round to the GFast, a lot of them will probably have FTTP. Migrate them to FTTP. If they don't, we'll work with you to make sure there's something available.
Okay, thank you. Next question, how will this affect our ability to migrate existing ADSL services if ADSL is both the only product in the area and isn't available to select on the portal checker?
So there's a small percentage of lines that can only get ADSL, that are on ADSL. Similar message really here is put those ones to the back of your migration plan. The odds are that FTTP would be available for them between now and the switch off date. So by the time you come to migrate them, they might be able to get FTTP. If they can't get FTTP at that point, we will make sure there's something available for you so that it's not in Zen's interest or your interest to suddenly turn off a load of customers. So we'll make sure there's something available for them.
Okay. This is an interesting one. What happens if we can't get a customer to acknowledge and move away from ADSL? Do they get switched automatically? Do they get cut off? Also fast forward into 2025.
Do you want to pick this one up, Jodie?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're engaging with one of your end users, trying to encourage what we call an organic move, so trying to encourage the end user to move of their own accord, then the next port of call for that would be to just do it. So that would be through a managed migration. So as I touched on earlier, that would just be telling the customer that you're going to be upgrading them to the correct service. To be fair, I think that would be the only option available. It means that it just means that there's that continuity of service that I touched on earlier, because obviously the key is to make sure that the service stays online, and in doing so, I'd just carry out a managed migration. But absolutely, there's no harm in engaging with your customers and trying to get them to move, voluntarily, if you will. So that's what I would do. Don't know if you'd do any different to that, Andy.
No, exactly the same. And
Yeah.
and I guess from a cost perspective, we don't charge partners anything to upgrade their ADSL or FTTC lines to Segea. There's no one-off fee for doing that migration path. So you don't need to get a setup fee or anything from them. So it's, I guess, write to them, let them know they're doing it, and make the change.
Yep.
Okay. Last 5 minutes, so just going to pick about a couple of sort of geography questions here, I suppose. So the first is distance from exchange still going to be an issue for remote inference rural locations?
So distance from the exchange, distance from the exchange doesn't matter so much when we move to Segea and FTTP. So FTTP distance isn't the challenge. Segea, it's distance from the cabinet in the street. Now, as we get to some rural locations, it could be a fair distance from the cabinet. So that's when that starts to play a role, and so it might be slower speeds, but that's not really any different today with FTTC. FTTP, rural areas, some of them, I guess it's not so much just the distance, but the challenge of the geography in terms of it might be fields, there could be mountains, there could be lakes that are in the way, which makes it more costly to roll out FTTP to those locations. And so they're not the number one priority for FTTP providers to roll out the connectivity. And that's where government funding comes in. So the government have, I'm sure everyone has seen headlines around the government's gigabit targets, and they're putting in money. So I can't remember the exact amount of money, but the government is putting money into the build to make those areas that are expensive and so not necessarily commercially attractive, so that FTTP is rolled out to those areas. So there'll still be some areas that are difficult or not reached, and that's where I guess wireless technology, satellite, things like that will play its part in the UK digital economy. But FTTP will be rolled out to a lot of those rural areas thanks to government money.
Okay, thanks, Andy. And second geography question. So moving from the countryside into central London, got plenty of partners obviously in that kind of area. One particular customer says half of my London-based customers only have ADSL available or an altnet.
Yep.
Are Zen happy that we'll be moving those connections away from you onto 4G, 5G, or to an alternative carrier? Are we happy that they're moving customers? No, we're not happy. But there's not much we can do about it, I guess. Central London is particularly challenging, I guess, for Openreach, in that in large parts of the capital, the under the ground is heavily congested, ducts are full, and so roads need to be dug up in order to put FTTP in there. Digging up roads in London involves road closures, and getting approval to do that can be challenging. So that's the challenge with London. With altnets, though, that I guess they've got the same problem, and so we appreciate that that's the problem. There's not central London, some parts of it are difficult, and there's not much we can do about it, unfortunately. Okay. Well, there's a number of questions outstanding, but they're kind of builds on previous ones. So what I'm going to endeavour to do is get those answered once we've deciphered some of the nuances and things we haven't necessarily covered. So we're going to wrap up now. We're coming up to our time. But I just wanted to end with a kind of a word from each of you. Obviously, as we said at the top, 34 days to go. Stop sell, it's here, UK wide, and then 24 months until we're done with the traditional copper network. Final thoughts at this juncture. Jodie.
I kind of want to just say, I don't know, this might sound a bit cheesy, but we just need to embrace it. We need to just accept that it's happening. And just to echo what I said previously and what Andy also said previously, is that we're here to support and, you know, and help with your planning, so that you can make a start as soon as possible, really. Just want to kind of express the time that it took for us to, you know, plan our whole process internally, with the customers that we've moved so far, whilst introducing some flexibility in there as well for those stops and starts that I talked about, so the actual planning process can actually be quite long. So please, if you haven't started, start as soon as possible, and we're here to help with that, of course.
Yep. Yeah, and just double down on that. You know, if you don't have a plan already, start putting one together. If you want some assistance, reach out to your account manager, and Jodie and I can assist, or our teams. Build your plans. Focus on the easy stuff first. Get as many lines done as quickly as possible. Concentrating on the easy stuff. Don't worry about the complicated ones just yet. Get that low-hanging fruit and worry about the complicated ones as you get to the back of your plan.
Okay. Well, that kind of brings us to a close. I'd like to thank you both for your time, of course, and for all our partners who managed to make it. I know we had a good chunk of you guys on the webinar this morning. Just to say, of course, we'll share the recording of this session. There's some questions, as I say, that are outstanding that probably need a little bit of work to kind of collate and put them into some sensible responses, but we'll ensure we'll get back to all of you that we haven't managed to cover off already this morning. And finally, for me, I'd just like to point you at our campaign centre. There's lots of collateral to help you support marketing initiatives around this particular topic. And again, encouraging you to get in touch with your account managers, the partner experience managers. We're here to help. We'll face this challenge together. And if you're not already talking to us actively, then please reach out. So with that, I'll say thank you once again and goodbye. And I look forward to seeing you all soon, perhaps at our partner event in the autumn.